Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov was on the Sunday morning talk shows in the United States over the weekend, and he was just spouting such terrible talking points. And we're going to go through these so that you can defeat these if you hear them. Now, what he was doing was essentially gaslighting. Gaslighting is a form of psychological manipulation and emotional abuse. It is where someone attempts to make a person question their own reality, memory, thoughts, sanity by distorting the facts and twisting their words. It originates from a 1944 film called Gaslight. And so this is an image of the film poster. Okay, so Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov used English language interview with U.S. outlet to reiterate Kremlin's explicit rejection of U.S. proposed initiatives for peace in Ukraine. It's not us who don't want peace. It's them. They don't want peace. We want peace. Okay. And he's also been, well, I'm going to get to that in just a moment. Lavrov continued efforts to mischaracterize Ukrainian president Volodymyr Zelensky as an impediment to an enduring peace. It's Zelensky's fault, not ours. Lavrov denied the Russia violated past international treaties. Like, they violate treaties left, right, and center, but that doesn't mean that he's not going to deny it. So he's asked by an NBC journalist, so let me back up. So two things here. First, there was an NBC journalist who did a fantastic job. I mean, she did her job as a journalist. I'm not sure I would agree with her on lots of things, but on this day with Lavrov, she did a great job. And 2 weeks ago, no, maybe it was like 3-4 weeks ago, something like that, there was another time that Lavrov was on being interviewed by a different journalist, and he just ran circles around this journalist. And I don't have anything against either journalist. I'm not pro either journalist. But she held his feet to the fire, and he had to deal with it. Now, Sunday morning is a time in the United States where people are either at church or they're watching the Sunday morning news shows about politics, and it's one choice or the other, basically, or maybe Little League games or something. But so Sunday morning is a big day for this sort of thing. Okay, now, when asked by an NBC journalist whether Russia invaded Ukraine, Lavrov dodged with his usual script. Quote, "We launched a special military operation to protect people labeled T by the regime," unquote. The journalist cut in. So that's a yes, but Lavrov just kept spinning. And so you'll see about how he was spinning and spinning and spinning. Timothy Milovanov did a great job summarizing all these. He's a former head of the former minister of the economy in Ukraine and the president of the Kyiv School of Economics. Here's his summary. Did a great job. Lavrov: Ukraine has the right to exist, provided it must let people go. The people who, it's actually an illegal and rigged referendum, who during a referendum decided that they belong to Russian culture. Okay, so he's talking about whether it's Crimea or the 4 oblasts that have been stolen. You're going to have 90% of the population that have voted to go. And then there's a good quarter of each of these populations that didn't even get a chance to vote because they were on the Ukrainian side. So is that even really legitimate in any way? But he says it is. And so that's the argument. That's a talking point that he's going to put forward. So it was an illegal referendum by the point of the gun with rigged numbers that are crazy that you wouldn't see anywhere else in any democracy. And yet he's hanging his argument on that. So that's the first point. Okay. Did Russia invade Ukraine? The journalist asks. Russia still evades answering this question. And Lavrov answers, democracy is when people... No, did Russia invade Ukraine? She continues. So Lavrov says, we launched a special military operation to protect the people in the Ukrainian regime called enemies and bombed. Okay, so he's not actually answering, but yes, that is, you did invade. And that's what she comes to. Lavrov, the countries that prepared the anti-Russian coup in Ukraine. Oh, he's going back to that. 2014, it was a coup. It couldn't just be that the Ukrainians were like, you know what? Russia's been doing us dirty for way too long. We're done with them. Okay? So he's talking about a coup, and they always come back to this coup attempt in Ukraine, supplied modern weapons, and supported a regime that violating human rights. So that's that mirroring effect. A number of you have contacted me and said, well, that's projection. I understand it's projection. I like the term mirroring because whatever they see whatever they're doing, they try to mirror onto their opponents. Okay, shouldn't expect us to accept security guarantees on their terms. But why should they accept security guarantees on your terms? Like that's not been answered. Why on earth, when you were supposed to have been the security guarantee for Ukraine, are you expecting the West to recognize your security concerns? Right? It must be decided by consensus, not unilaterally. No, it can be decided unilaterally. You have no right to say, like, just like you're a viewer. I can listen to what you have to say, but you can't make me, like a lot of viewers would say, don't talk about Trump. Trump's important. I don't want to talk about him and tax reform policy or educational policy, but as far as it relates to Ukraine, so you can't unilaterally make me not talk about Trump. You could leave. I don't want you to. I don't talk about Trump as regards to what's going on here in this, but you can't make me. Same thing here. Russia doesn't have the right, doesn't have the veto over Ukraine's security. Okay. Russia has never deliberately targeted civilian targets in Ukraine. What a lie. I mean, what a lie. In fact, Kyiv regime targeted their churches, civilian objects a few times. Well, a few times. It's more than that. Lavrov says they started the war to protect the people. Russia protection, and I'm going to come back to the targeting civilians in just a moment. Russia protection. Here's a direct hit on a residential building with a missile in Konstantinivka. Let's look at this. This is the missile coming into a civilian building just a few days ago where people were just sleeping. Right? That's the building on fire. See that? That is the missile coming into that building. And they say, well, we don't do it. Now, she held his feet to the fire, right? I'll show you this in a moment. You, Russia, and Putin himself don't recognize Zelensky as a legitimate president of Ukraine. No, we recognize him as a de facto head of the regime. And in this capacity, we're ready to meet with him. But signed official documents must have a legitimate leader. So this is a way of stalling, because if you're saying, well, I mean, he's there, but he's not legitimate. So when we get to that stage, we have to, have a legitimate leader. So it's a way of stalling, so that you're stalling to stall, to stall some more. Because even if you get to a stage where you can agree to a deal, we can't agree to a deal with you. We're going to continue this war until we, get a new leader, because we have a new. So it's a catch-22. The Ukrainians can't end martial law until the war has ceased, and they can't have an election until the martial law is ended, and they know that, and that's what they're playing on. Okay, now this is what I said I was going to get back to you. So here are the facts. This is the anchor, the news anchor to Lavrov. Here are the facts. Close to 50,000 civilians have either been killed or injured in this war. Russia has hit maternity wards, churches, schools, hospitals, a kindergarten just this week. So either the Russian military has terrible aim, or you're targeting civilians. I've said the same kind of thing. Good on her for saying this. I said, look, either you meant to do that, or your missiles aren't that dreamy. And I just said that just a couple of days ago. Okay. So which is it, she says, and let's hear his response. He's going to hem and haw, and he's not actually going to give a legitimate response.
Either the Russian military has terrible aim, or you are targeting civilians. Which is it?
Look, NBC is a very respectful structure, and I hope you are responsible for the words which you broadcast.
He didn't say either. He went a different direction, said, look, I mean, I hope you're responsible with the words that you're putting in your broadcast here.
I ask you to send us or to publicize the information to which you just referred, because we never targeted the civilian targets of the kind you cited.
No, they never targeted, like what I just showed you of them targeting a building where people were peacefully sleeping in early in the morning. They never targeted. They do this all the time, and then they lie about it all the time.
You might be mixing, the information, because it is a fact that quite a number of churches were purposefully hit by the Ukrainian regime. Quite a number of just civilian settlements.
But what about your actions? What about your actions?
Yeah, she's not letting him off the hook. What about what you do? Because he's trying to he's trying to garble it, right? Saying, well, send me what you have, because I haven't seen these, and it doesn't seem like maybe you're mixing things. Yeah, he's trying to muddy the water, and she's not letting him off the hook.
Mr. Foreign Minister.
Look, we're going by circles. I told you already what we mentioned repeatedly, that we never target civilian sites.
Yeah, but they do all the time. So, okay. And then Margarita Simonian picked up on the other point. We recognize Zelensky as de facto head of the regime, and in this capacity, we are not ready to meet. But when it comes to signing documents, we would need a clear understanding the person is signing is legitimate, and so according to Ukraine's constitution, Mr. Zelensky is not. Okay, this is another lie, and according to Ukraine's constitution, Mr. Zelensky is not. According to Ukraine's constitution, Mr. Zelensky is the only person who can be the president until there's a new election, which has to be beyond martial law, according to Ukraine's constitution. So this is just another outright lie. This Russian is lying, the foreign minister, and this Russian propagandist is lying to back the lie. So it's intentional. Okay, Ukraine's foreign minister, Andrei Sybiha, fired back at Lavrov's claim about Zelensky's illegitimacy, calling it absurd. He said this, quote, "Nothing is more ridiculous than a lecture on legitimacy from a man who sat in his chair for 21 years serving someone who's ruled for over 25 years, Sybiha said. Lavrov has no legitimacy to speak on the matter. Okay, now that's a really good point, because Putin spent $2 billion on a rigged election to get reelected with absurdly high numbers. Go back and look at what he got. Like, no democracy elects people at that kind of level unless they're under some kind of imminent threat like 9/11 or something like that. And even then, there wasn't something like they're elected immediately thereafter, right? Putin rigged the election and spent $2 billion to rig the election. And so it's actually a really great claim on Sybiha's part to say, from a man who's sat in his chair for over 21 years, serving someone who's ruled for over 25 years, like, you've been there in a rigged way, right? That's what that amounts to. Okay, Lavrov and other Russian officials, the ISW says, claims that about Zelensky's illegitimacy, and also set informational conditions for Russia to reject the legality of any peace agreement Russia may sign and justify Russia's reneging on such an agreement in the future. Hear that. This is really, really important. The informational conditions, they're setting the groundwork, seeding right now to reject the legality of whatever peace agreement comes, or even to meet in a peace agreement, and then to be able to renege on it in the future. Yeah. That's where they are. The Kremlin has used Lavrov multiple times over the past few days to clarify the Kremlin's position that there will be no Putin-Zelensky meeting, at least not anytime soon, until all our demands are met, and then we can have a meeting. But none of those demands will be met, and so there won't be any meeting. Lavrov continued insistence that any end to the war must address Russia's root causes, including multiple times following the August 15th Alaska summit, continued to indicate Russia's war aims have not changed, again, according to the ISW. So where are we? Well, here's Darth Putin. Trump is claiming that war would never have happened if he were president of the United States, while carrying out the exact same policies as Biden did. And while he's doing that, we find Lavrov just gaslighting to no end. I mean, he's just keeps putting out these, but hopefully you're now more prepared if you run into somebody and somebody says, well, what about this or what about that? Well, now you know how to answer. And good on this NBC News anchor. She did a fantastic job doing what journalists are supposed to do, holding his feet to the fire. All right, my friends, that's all that I have for this video. Thank you for your time, the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.